Hello, hello, I'm the official narrator. My job is to look through the first page of Google, review the nicknames provided by the internet, and then give my recommendations at the end. Today we're at like the second to last episode of Kanto, and we'll be looking over Mewtwo. Okay, so going into this, I have basically zero idea of what to expect coming into this. I've never looked up Mewtwo nicknames before because I don't look up legendaries, I don't nickname my legendaries, so I'm kind of interested to see what's going to come up. And the first thing I see that interests me is Blaine, and I think that's interesting just because of the idea that you associate Blaine more with his fire-type Magmar than anything, but there is also just the idea that he's also kind of associated with Mewtwo because he created him. Another thing that's also interesting is Giovanni, who I feel like is a little bit more associated with Mewtwo because of the film, and because, I want to say, yeah, Rainbow Rocket, he has the Mewtwo, and I think Pokemon Masters? I don't know, I didn't finish playing it. He might have Mewtwo in that one too, so like it's interesting to realize that Mewtwo can be associated with two trainers who you wouldn't normally think of in that way. Going down further, we've got Brainiac. I think that works as just a nice generic psychic type nickname you could apply to anyone. I recall seeing this one on Alakazam, and I liked it then. I think it works. It also is in reference to the Superman villain, which, I mean, I only know that guy exists because of Injustice 2, so I don't really know of anyone who he could physically represent, so I just kind of prefer to just think of the term, because it's a real term, and just go generic like that. Frieza I recognize, and that's basically like the one thing I was expecting to see. And I remember seeing the photo of Mewtwo and Frieza standing off against each other. And I really like that photo because it just makes me think, damn, Mewtwo's a badass. Because you realize this dude's like, what, 6'8" of pure psychic fuck you up. And he's just awesome. So I don't Dragon Ball, but I know that comparison has been made, so I think if you wanted to do that one, people will get it. They look a lot alike. Okay, I'm actually interested in this one, primarily because we decided... So I use Gygus for Gengar, the Ghastly line, but it's interesting to read the reasoning behind why Gygus could work for Mewtwo as well. Primarily because the whole alien thing, and I'm like, okay, that works. And then really when you think about it, Mewtwo is basically portrayed as the villain or final boss of the Pokemon games, so I think that actually works pretty well there. I'm not going to abandon... Well, firstly, I'm not going to nickname Mewtwo, period. But I do think that, like, you could get away with that. I personally like my idea of Gengar a little bit better, but I totally get where this is coming from. Alright, going real quick over this, because I recognize the name Sephiroth, I don't Final Fantasy. I assume this is just because villain, and then you also notice villain here with Thanos, and then Voldemort, so I guess if we want to just take the theme of just name it after a bad guy, you could do that. I really kind of don't think the parallels work. I think Thanos only works in the sense that it's purple, and that's about where it ends. And then I don't really understand the comparisons with the rest. Okay, if I were to recommend things that you probably shouldn't name it, Edgelord and Emo King would be the top two of maybe don't use this is a really crap idea for a nickname, why would you suggest this? Genius, I sort of like, that's kind of clever. Megamind, there's another generic psychic type nickname we've seen before in the Alakazam episode, and yeah, Mutant, there's another kind of clever wordplay, I don't necessarily hate that one. Actually, I really like that idea of the SAX. That is pretty clever. So, Metroid Fusion, there is a clone of Samus known as the SAX, and that's kind of, you know, what Mewtwo is, the clone of Mew. And in, I don't know if I'd say in both cases the clone is more powerful, but it's still kind of an interesting parallel, and I like that. So it took me actually seeing this a second time to get the joke. I saw Copycat before, and I was just thinking like about Ditto and how that was a suggestion. And then I was like, oh, get it? Because they're cats. But the thing is, truthfully, I never really thought of Mew or Mewtwo as cat-like, even though that's kind of what people have decided it is. I don't know, to me they've always just been like alien things. I never thought of them as cats before, and I think the idea of comparing them to cats is a little bit weird, but yeah, it's technically a copy cat, so if you want to do that, it makes sense. I've seen Einstein twice now before, so I guess I'll acknowledge it. We all know who Einstein is, what he did. Science, big brains. Mewtwo is science and big brains as well. There you go. Okay, so we've reached the bottom, and it's been a bit of a mixed bag. Like, I've been surprised enough to where I'm like, okay, there's a few that I actually do like, and there's also just a lot that are, like, kind of basic? I don't know. Let's check the spreadsheet, see if anything else wows me. I don't really agree with any of this stuff, so I'm just gonna kind of ignore it. The one thing I do feel like acknowledging, though, was upon looking through these, I saw a lot of them that were just, like, very open-ended names, where it would be, like, destruction, annihilation, or something along those lines, where it's meant to sound intimidating. And I didn't feel the need to highlight any of them, but if that's the road you want to take, then go ahead. Like, there's plenty of words that you could use to fit in that. The ones that I like the best, which is kind of funny, because two others that I stumbled across that I didn't feel the need to highlight, but I saw them a couple times, and it was like X-Men references. So Xavier, which I don't think necessarily works, because that's just the name of anybody. If you called it Professor Xavier, then it at least, X-Men, I get it. As to where other words that would be like, okay, why is this guy Xavier? Who's Xavier? And then Magneto, which I'm pretty sure we saw in a previous episode, but I can't quite remember who it was. And I think it was one of those situations where it's like, I think it was probably just fucking Magneton. And it was the case of, like, nothing else is gonna beat it. And I think if you want to pick Magneto, Magneton's going to be the better choice than Mewtwo. Especially because Mewtwo doesn't have magnetic powers, but they're just trying to play the psychic thing. But the three I like the best, which is kind of funny because it just comes down to pick which reference you like the most. I'm going to acknowledge Frieza, just because I know that's the popular choice. So that one I want to highlight, Gygus, and then SAX. So again, which reference do you like the best is basically what it comes down to, and out of all of them, I would go with SAX if I personally did use any of them. But I don't. So I'll save SAX for something else later down the line when I decide, this will fit. But until then, I don't know. But yeah, that's the ideas for Mewtwo. It was okay. Not terrible. Not great. But yeah, if you've got any suggestions for Mewtwo, leave them in the comments below. Provide suggestions and ideas. That was basically repeating the same thing. And let's give a thumbs up to those good comments out there. One Pokemon left.